Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. When Claire Newman stepped into Crimson Lights that afternoon, she never imagined her entire world was about to tilt on its axis. She had come for a quiet coffee, a moment to clear her head after another exhausting conversation with Victor, who still hovered over her like she was a fragile child despite everything she'd proven. She wanted space, independence, and maybe just a chance to breathe without being treated like a project. But when she turned toward the door, her breath hitched. A young man stood there, his frame tall and lean, his eyes piercing blue with a flicker of something hauntingly familiar. For a moment, she thought she was seeing a ghost, some strange reflection of her past, until he opened his mouth and shattered her reality with 5 words that echoed in her bones. "I came here to find my mother." Claire's stomach knotted instantly. Her palms went clammy as she blinked, trying to process what he had said. She had lived her entire young life in a twisted cage of lies spun by Jordan, her so-called aunt, who had fed her a poisoned story about who she was, where she came from, and what she deserved. Claire thought she had pieced together the truth after all the devastation Jordan left behind. But this stranger, this boy, no, not a boy, but a young man maybe in his late teens, stood before her claiming something she never dared imagine. He was looking straight at her with recognition, determination, and a tremor of fear. She felt the air crackle with a strange familiarity, the way his jaw clenched like hers, the way his voice carried an edge she knew deep inside her marrow. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor, and the entire cafe fell silent. People glanced their way, some whispering, others pretending not to notice, but Claire couldn't hear any of it. All she could hear was her heart pounding in her ears. She stammered, her lips dry, her voice faint. "What did you just say?" The young man didn't flinch. His eyes locked on hers, a mix of anger, pain, and a strange, desperate hope. "I came here to find my mother," he repeated, slower this time, as though daring her to deny it. Claire shook her head in disbelief, her mind racing through timelines, memories, possibilities she thought were sealed away forever. She never had a child, or at least, she believed she hadn't. Jordan had stolen so much from her, manipulated every chapter of her life. Was it possible Jordan had stolen this, too? Was this young man proof of another deception, another cruel trick? Or, was this her son, flesh and blood, standing before her after years of being hidden away? Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Who are you?" He took a shaky breath, his expression softening just slightly, as though he saw her doubt and confusion but refused to back down. "My name is Aiden. And I've been searching for you for a long time. They told me you didn't want me. That you gave me up, that you didn't care. But I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I needed to see you for myself." Claire's knees nearly buckled, and she reached for a chair to steady herself. The name hit her like a dagger, Aiden. Something about it felt both foreign and intimate, like a piece of herself she never knew was missing. She looked into his eyes, eyes that mirrored her own, and suddenly 1,000 unspoken emotions rushed through her, grief, rage, wonder, guilt, and an ache so deep it felt like her heart was splitting open. The weight of the moment dragged her back into memories of Jordan's cruel whispers in the dark corners of her childhood. She remembered how Jordan told her she was unlovable, unwanted, and cursed. What if Jordan hadn't just twisted her past but erased parts of it altogether? Could Jordan have taken her child, hidden him, and forced Claire to live in ignorance of his existence? The idea was both terrifying and strangely believable. Aiden took a step closer, his hands trembling as he fumbled for words. "I didn't know how you'd react. I didn't even know if you'd recognize me. But I had to come. I had to know if I was right. I had to know if you're really my mother." His voice cracked at the word mother, and Claire felt her soul quake. For so long, she had dreamed of belonging, of finding someone who was truly hers. She thought she found it with her father, with Nicky, with the family she was finally beginning to build. But now here was someone else, claiming a bond she never dared to imagine, her own child. Her throat burned with unshed tears, and she whispered, almost to herself, "This can't be real." But Aiden's face hardened again, his eyes narrowing with both hurt and defiance. "It's real," he said firmly. "And whether you want me in your life or not, I'm not leaving until I get the truth. I need answers. I deserve answers." The quiet hum of the corporate office, the soft glow of the computer screen, the familiar weight of a well-tailored suit, these are the textures of Claire Grace's new reality, a life meticulously built on the fragile foundation of amnesia and curated kindness. Each day is a lesson in normalcy, a performance where she plays the part of a grateful, rehabilitated woman, the long-lost niece of the powerful Abbott family. The role is demanding, requiring a constant vigilance against the shadows that flicker at the edge of her consciousness, shadows with the faint scent of gardenias and the echo of a lullaby she cannot name. She is cared for, even loved, in a way that feels both genuine and alien. Victoria Newman, a woman of formidable strength and unexpected compassion, has become her anchor, her protector, her surrogate mother. In Victoria's presence, Claire finds a semblance of peace, a temporary salve for the ancient, aching void within her. Yet, the void remains, a silent, hungry thing that no amount of Abbott generosity can truly fill. It is a void with a specific shape, a mother-shaped emptiness that defines every quiet moment, every unanswered question of her origin story, rewritten by Jordan. Then, the world fractures. The door opens, and he is there. Not as a memory, not as a phantom from the nightmares that still occasionally plague her, but as a living, breathing man. Kyle Abbott. His presence is a seismic event in the carefully ordered landscape of her mind. He is both familiar and utterly strange, a walking, talking contradiction. He is the man whose life she was manipulated into appending, a face from a past she is supposed to have forgotten, a past she is actively being shielded from by the very people who now surround her. But he is also something else, something far more profound and biologically undeniable. He is her son. The child she was told had died. The source of the deepest, most primal wound that Jordan's poisonous lies had inflicted upon her. The shock that freezes Claire in that moment is not a simple surprise. It is a cataclysmic internal event, a perfect storm of cognitive dissonance, shattered narrative, and raw, awakening instinct. Visually, the scene is a study in contrast. Kyle, likely angry, confused, and driven by a need for answers or confrontation, his energy aggressive and forward-moving. Claire, however, is thrown completely inward. The external world, the opulent office, the sound of his voice, even Victoria's likely protective reaction, recedes into a dull roar. Her body might go still, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, would not see the man Kyle is now, but would instead see straight through him, into the ghost of the infant she was forced to mourn. It is a moment of silent, violent reordering of her entire universe. The foundational story of her life, the tragedy of her dead child, the very core of her victimhood at Jordan's hands, evaporates in an instant, replaced by a staggering, terrifying, and exhilarating truth. He lived. He is here. This shock is immediately followed by a torrential flood of implications that must feel like a physical blow. The first and most overwhelming is the resurrection of the maternal bond. This is not an intellectual realization, it is a visceral, biological awakening. Every cell in her body seems to remember what her mind was forced to forget. The love she had been convinced was buried in a tiny grave suddenly has a living, breathing target. It is a love that is 20-something years overdue, a dam of repressed emotion breaking with terrifying force. This instinctual pull towards him, the urge to reach out, to touch his face, to hold him, would be nearly impossible to suppress. It exists in direct, violent conflict with the persona of Claire Grace. Claire Grace is polite, contrite, and keeps a respectful distance. Claire Grace does not have a living son. Claire Grace would be confused and alarmed by Kyle's anger, not utterly devastated by it. To act on her instinct would be to shatter the careful fiction of her amnesia and reveal the depth of the memories that are now crashing back upon her shores. This leads to the second monumental implication, the immediate and necessary deception. In the span of a heartbeat, Claire must make a choice. To acknowledge Kyle, to reveal that she knows exactly who he is, would be to betray Victoria's trust completely. It would expose that her amnesia is either a lie or has been miraculously cured in the most inconvenient moment possible. It would throw her newfound stability into jeopardy and likely trigger a wave of fury and betrayal from Kyle himself, who would see her not as a fellow victim of Jordan, but as a co-conspirator who has been secretly manipulating his family while knowing her true connection to him. Therefore, the shock must be masked. The earth-shattering recognition in her eyes must be quickly veiled behind a performance of confusion and alarm. She must force her body to recoil from her own son, to look at him not with a mother's love, but with the wary fear of a woman who only knows him as a person she once wronged. The psychological toll of this split is immense. She is being forced to deny the most fundamental truth of her existence at the very moment of its discovery. The pain of this repression would be excruciating, a silent scream contained within the polite facade of Claire Grace. For Kyle, the encounter is equally transformative, though he operates from a place of incomplete information. His arrival is doubtless fueled by a maelstrom of emotions, rage at the renewed threat Jordan represents, suspicion towards Claire's place in his family's inner sanctum, and a deep, unresolved hurt from the trauma she inflicted. He expects to confront a villain, or at best, a broken pawn. He is armed for a fight. He does not expect to see whatever it is he sees in her eyes in that first unguarded second before her mask slams down. Her shock will not read as maternal recognition to him, he has no context for that. He will likely interpret it as guilt, fear, or surprise at being caught. But her reaction, the depth of it, might give him pause. It might seem disproportionate to the situation. Why does this woman, who is supposed to be a forgetful amnesiac, look so utterly and personally devastated by his presence? The seed of doubt is planted in that moment. Her subsequent performance, if it is too strained, too full of a strange and unplaceable sorrow, will only water that seed. He came for a fight, but he may leave with a question that will gnaw at him, a dissonance he cannot explain. The aftermath of this encounter will ripple through Claire's every interaction, fundamentally altering her path forward. The central, driving motivation of her life has been violently and beautifully upended. She came to Genoa City, under Jordan's manipulation, with a twisted mission. Then, she stayed under Victoria's wing with a new mission, to heal, to find out who she is without the poison of her past. Now, in an instant, that mission has crystallized into something razor-sharp and profoundly personal. The abstract desire to find her mother has been replaced by the concrete, urgent need to find her son. Not just biologically, but emotionally. She will now look at him with new eyes, hungry for every detail. She will watch him with Summer, studying their dynamic, aching with a bittersweet mix of joy for his happiness and grief for the moments she missed. She will see his ambition at Jabot, his conflicts with his own father, his place in the vast Abbot Newman tapestry, and she will view it all through the lens of a mother who has been absent for a lifetime. Every piece of information she gathers about him is a treasure, a fragment of the life she was robbed of. This new mission puts her in an impossibly precarious position. Her entire existence within the family is now a lie of omission. Every conversation with Victoria is tinged with this new, monumental secret. Can she continue to accept Victoria's maternal protection while hiding the fact that she has a son who is Victoria's own nephew by marriage? The guilt will be corrosive. Furthermore, her strategy must change entirely. Before, avoiding the past was a therapeutic goal. Now, it is a necessary tactic to maintain her position close to Kyle while she figures out how to navigate this impossible situation. She must now actively manipulate the narrative around her amnesia, carefully doling out glimpses of recovered memory that are safe, while fiercely protecting the core truth she now possesses. She is no longer a passive recipient of care, she is an active agent in a deeply dangerous game, playing for the highest possible stakes, a relationship with the child she thought was lost to her forever. The phrase "I came here to find my mother" takes on a devastating new resonance. Her initial quest, born from Jordan's lies, was a search for Eve, for an origin point. In a cruel and beautiful twist of fate, she has found something else entirely. She has found the next generation. She has found her own legacy. In finding her son, she may ultimately find a more complete version of herself. The mother she was always meant to be is not in the past with Eve, but in the future, with Kyle. The journey is no longer about looking backward for answers, but about forging a path forward against impossible odds. The shock of seeing him is the catalyst that divides her life into a before and after. It is the end of her journey as a lost daughter and the terrifying, glorious beginning of her journey as a found mother. The performance must go on, but now every word, every glance, every silent moment is filled with the deafening, unspoken truth of a love that has just been resurrected from the dead.